everyone. My name is Alice. I am host of House ZK. I'm joined here today with Illia, co-founder of NOIRCON. Really excited to have you here today and really excited to chat more about NEIR and about ZK.
For sure, yeah. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. I'm wondering if you can, very curious to hear more about the origin story behind NEIR. So what was the intention behind developing your own L1 and how has your vision kind of evolved since then?
Yeah, so actually originally NEIR was an AI company. It was NEIR AI, and it was 2017. We were trying to teach machines to code, which back then sounded like a science fiction and now kind of an everyday thing. And we had a lot of students, computer science students, doing small tasks for us to do data labeling, crowdsourcing. And we had challenge paying them. They were in Eastern Europe, in China, in Southeast Asia, everywhere where it's actually hard to move money. And so we started looking at blockchain to solve our own problem. How do we effectively move money to people who are all over the world and we don't want to kind of have a massive process with them? And Bitcoin, Ethereum, even back then already had too high of fees. We looked at other solutions that were prevalent back in the day in 2018, but none of them survived for very clear reasons. And so we started looking at, okay, well, what is the challenge? What is the problem? There's obviously a challenge with scalability. That was something we kind of addressed face on. How do we build a network that can scale to billions of users, support micropayments, able to continue grow with the usage? As well as ease of use, right? People have struggled and still struggling sometimes with using blockchains, and ease of development. So we approached it by allowing people to use TypeScript, Rust, now Python is available as well, and so have a WebAssembly VM that allows effectively any generic computation done. NEIR is a home for most complex smart contracts in Web3. So that was kind of the origin. We tried to use blockchain. It kind of didn't support what we wanted, and so we invested in building out the ecosystem and infrastructure to really deliver this result. And then as kind of over the past year, we kind of resurrected NEIR AI to actually continue pushing on this vision of how do we bring kind of, if you assume AI can write code, the future looks very different because you don't actually need applications and wallets. You can directly have your AI actually write code on the fly for specific interactions. But blockchain is needed as a way to coordinate, pay, and kind of do all these resources. So how does AI and blockchain come together? That's one of the things that I'm kind of excited going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned kind of the merging of AI and blockchain. I'm wondering if you see any ways where ZK can be applied there as well, maybe on the privacy preserving side, say for any kind of data where you don't want to reveal like any kinds of private inputs or any kinds of private information. Do you see ZK having a role in what you're building right now, or do you see it more as like a separate kind of entity?
Yeah, so ZK is important for kind of as technology, and we've seen over past 5 years its continuous improvement. So whatever I'm saying now is obviously just a checkpoint of time. For example, machine learning itself and like large data, it's very impractical right now. The overhead is too big. But there's a ton of teams working on improving that, and so it can continuously improve. Somebody just showed me a demo of running a model locally and proving it with ZK and submitting that proof. So there is interesting progress on that. But if we're talking about more, payments, kind of identity, and any kind of direct interactions with blockchain, this is where being able to prove something locally with ZK and then submit the proof on chain or to other parties can provide you very good privacy guarantees. And so I think that is here. It's possible. Obviously, AdStack been building this kind of technology, but also Zcash has been around as well. I think that is kind of an important use case that's possible right now.
Absolutely. And I know that you previously mentioned a bit about the developer experience side. So there's compatibility with TypeScript and some other languages as well. I wonder if you can talk about some of the maybe limitations or current gaps with existing tooling for developers and how you guys at Near are trying to maybe address that gap with any kinds of specific frameworks, specific types of tooling that can be made available for developers.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, we invested in kind of building out chain around WebAssembly because it seemed like the most generic kind of VM that has support from large companies, has a lot of kind of developer activity. Rust has native bindings for it. And so that's been, pretty positive from a developer perspective. But it still has limitations just being on chain, right? You cannot read external data. You cannot do long-lasting computations. You cannot have, stateful rich state like, SQL queries, etc. So one of the things we've actually introduced last week is called shade agents. It's this idea that you can actually have a control plane in a smart contract, but all the calculations, computations, data is done inside trusted execution environment. And so this allows to effectively offload like any arbitrary computation, which can be AI, can be large data, can be private as well because it runs inside TE, to effectively a coprocessor, and then this coprocessor resumes the transaction on Near with a response, with a result, and then smart contract can verify that it's still correct, that it doesn't do anything outside a rule set, and then maybe marshal assets, marshal resources on chain. So that's kind of, we think, actually going to open up a completely new developer paradigm because traditionally it's actually been really hard to go from, I have an idea, maybe I build like a basic smart contract to like, this is a production, high grade, like really hard to break smart contract or impossible to break smart contract. That kind of transition being really hard. Now, if you want to build, for example, a index fund that rebalances based on how people yap on Twitter, like you can just do that like inside TE, and then you actually even prepare the rebalancing, like intent-based rebalancing, and then you just settle that on chain, right? So you have effectively removed all the problems with Oracle problems, fetching data, using AI, and even MEV through this model. So I do think they're going to be actually used for ZK in the future as ZK becomes more performant, as it itself becomes actually embedded in hardware. There's a few different teams that are working on how do we actually ZKify as you execute on the hardware so that by the time you execute it, you actually have a ZK proof, right? As soon as we have that kind of level, then this model actually will become even more prevalent because now you don't just have like the kind of verification from the hardware, but you also have ZK proof that this calculation was done. So I think that would be really interesting. And so, yeah, like that is kind of, a lot of the design is waiting for that type of improvement on speed, including on blockchain as well. But yeah, and given kind of how the space has been evolving, I'm sure this is arriving within like the next 3-5 years.
Yeah, absolutely. And you talked about like the need for the improvement within speed. I'm wondering if there's any other kinds of challenges that you see surrounding with ZK, and then also since you guys are using TEs in that space, are there any kinds of challenges or barriers to more mainstream adoption that you see that needs to be urgently addressed right now?
Yeah, so with TEs, the interesting thing is it's only been possible for the last like 6-7 months because it's only the current generation of hardware that just came out that is able to kind of be easily programmed and doesn't have kind of known issues that like Intel SGX had before. And so the biggest kind of barrier there is literally just availability of this hardware, right? Like all the data centers built kind of before that just don't have it. And so as the new data centers have been built, as Blackwells are getting shipped and built with a new hardware, that's where the kind of like the limitation is right now. And so kind of like it's a little bit of like, let's build the infrastructure that can just roll out into this hardware as it becomes available. I mean, there's like a few other things, which is, for long term, we want to make sure that there is investment into like open trust execution environment, right? So it's not like proprietary by kind of this Intel and other hardware providers, but it's really hard to actually get hardware to the level that Intel is at. Looking back at ZK, I think, there's been a ton of improvements, right? Like Sync doing the amazing work with Prover Network. Obviously excited to see AdStack launching as well. I think there is a question of just kind of different use cases and kind of making it really easy for people to use. But I think the overall, like it's becoming easier for developers to like kind of pick up and do something with ZK, which has been pretty hard historically. And then it's really now more about showcasing, like, okay, in this use case, it is the right tool, right? So, if I'm implementing something like that, for example, does off-chain, like multi-party, like can I use ZK really easily in that case so that both sides can verify, and then we settle already, like final outcome, like compressed, like aggregated on-chain, right? Things like that, like just making those examples available so people can pick it up and kind of use it. I think the other challenge is the implementation. Like it's really, like as soon as you go to privacy 100%, you really don't know if the implementation has bugs. So the good example is like Zcash. They don't actually know how many users they have, how many like holders of Zcash they have. And so if there's any issues as well, it's like not known. So kind of how to balance that and how to like really address that, I think it's going to be really important because we have seen vulnerabilities in the implementations, and so like that kind of Schrödinger cat problem is pretty hard to address. So I think formal verification will be extremely important for that. This is one of the things on the AI side we actually looking at how do we use AI to do formal verification for code, including ZK proofs, but also smart contracts, AI agents, etc. And so I think that would be a really important unlock as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And just on that point, like even for Zcash, I remember that there was this kind of bug that they didn't discover until maybe around a year later. So there's definitely a lot of, since there's so many people within this, or like so few people in this space who are able to detect these bugs. It's really important, as you mentioned, to have maybe some formal verification methods, some areas where we can verify the security of these kinds of projects. So really great that you brought that up. Also very curious to hear about some of your thoughts relating to the ZK endgame, which a lot of projects suspect that ZK is kind of, they see ZK as the dominating force in the future. But do you believe that we'll see maybe instead a combination of multiple tools or multiple primitives, like with TEs or like with other primitives like MPC and FHE in the future? Or do you suspect we'll see one of these becoming more dominant?
Yeah, so it's really interesting because, let's just, like ZK in game, the way it's used right now, like people are a little bit skipping the whole point that like it's in the way people describe, at least, it's you first need to execute, then you prove, right? And so that always will be slower than if you don't need to prove. Right? Now, again, why I mentioned is if your hardware has a ZK proving embedded into the computation process, right? So literally at every time, like your VM, like be that x84 or some other VM, directly has proofs attached to it, then by the time of execution you have a ZK proof. That obviously, now nobody needs to recompute, re-verify. That obviously is better. The TEs effectively offer this right now with, few kind of assumption that you're trusting Intel, for example, with their certificate and, there's some side channels, etc., that can be attacked. So even right now, you can actually do some interesting things where you have a TE kind of fast path, and then you have a slow path verification, and that's your like final finality, but you can trust most of the time the TE. And actually, I think Unichain is doing kind of that. And so you get like additional guarantees around like privacy of mempool and other stuff. Now, if there's a ZK proving that's quick, you can then after TE right away prove a ZK and then publish ZK proof, and now like TE itself cannot do anything malicious state transition, even if it like broken by Intel CPU, right, Intel chip. So I think like combination of these things will definitely give you just better properties. And as hardware itself gets, as hardware manufacturers also adopt some of the ZK stuff because it got fast enough, I think we'll get to a level where you effectively just any computation is run inside confidential mode and with a ZK proof. And then when you have that hardware, then blockchains become easy. So I do think the end game is combination of these technologies embedded in hardware and kind of available everywhere. That will take some time and probably will require actually new hardware manufacturers kind of coming out of blockchain and actually who are building with that verifiability in mind. But yeah, I'm excited to see that. Meanwhile, we can practically use these things where they apply right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So we'll see kind of a combination of these approaches in the future. And I like how you mentioned TEs as a kind of like a fast track way for verification, but then there's also other methods for that finality. So we'll definitely see like a combination of these approaches being used depending on the use case. But on the topic of use cases, are there any particular like ZK-based use cases that you see the most potential in, or maybe some use cases currently being built on NEAR, which you are particularly excited about?
Yeah, so I mean, one thing that we have on NEAR, which is Intense, which allows effectively like any kind of global market trading, be it crypto or even non-crypto. And so that's why I was mentioning kind of an example of, you know, the idea is there you first do some off-chain agreement, right? Like let's say we agree to swap, you know, some NEAR for some Zcash. The challenge is like right now that is effectively in plain text settled on chain, right? And so then the kind of the ownership exchange. Ideally, that itself also is just a ZK proof that we agreed on this, and then we know we have a claim to the right assets, and so like our clients. So that's an example I think where kind of ZK is extremely important, and also like where you definitely don't want to mess up with the verification of proofs because this effectively controls all the assets in the system. So I'm really excited about that because that kind of adds layer of kind of privacy that people can leverage. We just added actually Zcash support for that, so that people can go kind of and like shield their assets if they want to. I think there is interesting use cases around just identity with ZK as well, where either you can prove your identity or you can leverage some kind of like OAuth, etc., verification, like ZK-TLS type things for that. So yeah, I'm just excited to see all of this kind of being used across the board.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really great that we're finally kind of transitioning from this research phase within ZK to more application ready. So now we're able to start building these real world applications that can apply not just within like our Web3 space, but even beyond. So I find that very exciting as well. And then also, just as like a kind of last question before we close up, what do you anticipate NEAR being like evolving in the next couple of years? And maybe on the shorter term side, if you have any kinds of announcements or any kinds of advice that you want to tell to our audience members who are more interested in being more involved with NEAR.
Yeah, so NEAR is blockchain for AI, and so kind of our target is really to become kind of all the tools that AI needs to effectively abstract blockchains, to navigate Web3, to navigate Web2, to find other agents, other AI assistants, and kind of really become AI will become the interface you're interacting with computing, internet, other services and goods. And the cool thing about AI is it doesn't need like 10 blue links from search results. It can go and scan every single option and evaluate kind of based on your preferences. And so, but that actually lays very well with P2P because now you can just go and connect with hundreds and thousands of other providers and like negotiate with them directly. So that's kind of what NEAR's ecosystem is building, right? we're enabling chain signatures to effectively any application on Near can hold assets on every chain. We have intents to being able to marshal the assets now between chains and Web2. And then we have inter-agent protocol we call Agent Interaction and Transaction Protocol, AITP, to really now connect these agents and use intents, use chain signatures to do all these things. So that's kind of the stack we're building, and like we kind of been rolling out one piece at a time. We're announcing this week the AITP kind of open reference, and like we asking for more for comments, like requests for comments, and from there we're going to be showing you now an assistant that actually can go and buy stuff from Amazon with USDC, right? You can onboard maybe on different chain, like you have USDC on Base, and then you'll pay, and merchant accepts things on Solana, right? And that is being done through intents to move their assets around. So all those things just like really showing the kind of how this picture ties together. And yeah, for people who want to kind of contribute or participate, right, check out kind of Near intents. It's like multi-chain. You can log in with Near Wallet, with MetaMask, with Solana Wallet, and kind of use it. We have a number of applications around chain signatures who kind of bring in Bitcoin, lending, the Runes marketplace, etc., prime brokerage. And then on the AI side, Near AI is kind of rolling out more and more it's still alpha, but showing you what these agents can be able to do. We also have a no-code agent builder where you can just describe the agent you want and it will try to build it for you, and you can like refine it and test it. So kind of showcasing that like more and more of these things really coming together and really towards this future of blockchain for AI.
Mm-hmm. Great. But thank you so much, Illia, for joining us today, and really appreciated chatting with you and all the insights you brought.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Our coverage at NOIRCON. Really incredible to see all of the tremendous strides that the Aztec team is making, as well as all the other teams from the interviews we had today. Really, we're in such a great time to be able to see this transition from theory and research to building real applications, especially within privacy preserving applications. But until then, we'll see you next time.